A to the K.
to the K.
To the K.
Hello, one and all. Welcome to the A to the K Wrestling Show. Joining us today, we have psychic medium and host of the Spirit Speakeasy podcast, former WWE Diva, Joy Giovanni. Joy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh my gosh, what a fancy welcome. Thank you guys for having me. It's an honor to be here.
I know, thank you very much. So we thought we'd start if we could at sort of the beginning of your wrestling career, I suppose. So just starting off by asking sort of how the opportunity come about to be part of the Diva Search and if you were a fan of wrestling growing up.
Well, it's very generous of you to call it a wrestling career. So thank you for that. That's very generous. I did watch wrestling when I was a kid. I grew up in Boston and most of my cousins are from like the Philadelphia area. And so it was really popular back in, not to date myself, I was a kid in the kind of mid to late 80s. And we would play wrestling probably just like most other kids did back then. And it was in that generation of Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart and Hulk Hogan and all the greats that we remember from back in the day. So I did watch it. And then, as often happens as we grow and have other interests in our lives, completely forgot that it existed. It just wasn't a part of my experience anymore. And by that time, I was doing some acting and modeling in LA. I live not too far from Los Angeles and really was working on my career in that way and had been working really hard. I earned my way into SAG, which is a Screen Actors Guild, and was just kind of chipping away at more of a traditional film and television career, trying to, bit little parts and this and that, how it works. And it was actually an audition that I got sent on for the Diva Search initial pool of girls that they were, women, I should say, that they were looking for. They kind of did, I hate to say it this way, it's like a terrible term and hopefully they're moving away from it, but they used to call it cattle call, quote unquote, of just like, send us every remotely hot girl you have. That's kind of what it was. So I was on this audition with, more than 100 other girls. And that was only the Los Angeles audition. I'm aware that they did like multiple all over the US.
Yeah, wow. It's throwing you into the deep end. What was kind of, obviously, they kind of dwindled that down, obviously, and you kind of made the final list that we got to see on TV. Yeah. What was kind of the reaction in the locker room from the other divas, to the Diva Search contestants? Was everyone quite welcoming, or and did that change a little bit after the dodgeball game at SummerSlam?
Oh, that's so funny. I think it's the way it's portrayed, I guess, from the outside, from what everyone can see just on TV. I think it's so misleading. So originally they dwindled us down to, I think it was like 20 or 25. And then if you remember, they did that like New York special. We had no interaction with anyone else except a few gentlemen from the company at that time, whoever was there for those auditions and that New York thing. And then when they moved us over for the weekly televised, I guess, competition segment as a regular part of the show, we were there in the arena with them, but we were kept totally segregated from them and only brought out of our own locker room, which I think it's even a little bit of a stretch to call it a locker room. It was not like, it was probably as big as like a decently sized bedroom. It wasn't very big. And they wanted to keep us almost like sequestered. So we didn't know what was going on. We didn't know a lot about the show. And I think the problem, if you can even call it a problem, came when they didn't explain to the existing talent roster that that's what they were doing. And so it appeared to other people like we just all didn't want to interact with anyone. And as you know, there are kind of rules backstage where you're supposed to do things in a certain way. So we just came off as really rude, but it wasn't our intention. We were all just kind of nervous. You're still on an audition and you're getting told you're to stay in this room and don't come out unless we come get you, kind of a thing. We had a bathroom in there and everything we would need. So it was set up in a strange way, and I think a lot of people don't know that part. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously, as part of it, you took part in a lot of different segments each week, and one of them sort of notably was Dis the Diva. I just sort of wanted to sort of touch on that, and obviously from a fan perspective, the segment sort of felt very personal at times. So is that? Did you sort of plan what you would say to each other beforehand, or was that sort of more off the cuff kind of thing?
Yes and no. So if you recall, it's been a really long time ago, and quite honestly, you don't look old enough to recall any of this, but if you recall, the week before was when they called us each individually into that room that just had the television screen, and we were to say who we would vote off and why.
Yeah.
I want to take you back a little bit to just remember that time period in culture and in history. As a woman actor model in LA, you were considered undesirable if you were married or had children. You would like not get roles because of it, because then you were a liability. They wouldn't have as much claim on your time, that kind of a thing. So really the personal attack came from someone else against me because I was outed on international television that not only was I married, but I was a mom of 2 kids, and nobody knew that about. My agents didn't know, and I got called aside even after that segment by all the higher ups, and they were like, do you have kids? I mean, they didn't make it an issue because I kind of, you guys will like this. I don't think I've said this before. One of the things I said to them, which I'm not the most quick-witted in these situations, I was very taken back. And I mean, anytime you're going to talk about someone's kids when they're not expecting it, and then a camera's on you to see your reaction, like I was just like, okay, I have to like not make a scene. I just kind of said to them in that private call aside after, was like, wow, it's really concerning that a company who bases so much on privacy and things that go on backstage being private, to have this happen just seems like it'd be kind of counter to the culture here. That was kind of how I left it.
Yeah.
And then the next week, as you were asking about, we did Just the Diva. Several of us kind of chatted about what we might say. I will tell you, we did ask those that were in charge of the segment, are we allowed to say anything? Like, are we limited by language, or should we not use profanity? And they said, say whatever you want. So the other thing that we didn't know is the main talent of the show, they had just implemented something to where they were going to get fined for using profanity. And not only did they not tell us, but they gave us green light to say whatever we wanted. So you could kind of see them setting up this, I don't even think it was intentional, this strange dynamic between like, who do these girls think, ladies, whatever, think they are, coming in here flagrantly disregarding all of our rules and all of our culture. And so it was a little strange. That's kind of how that happened.
Yeah.
Definite potential for fines in that segment. A lot of S-bombs being dropped. Obviously, in that particular, so I was going to ask you about the segment with Carmella, because I couldn't believe it at the time as well. I was thinking like, did WWE want to, obviously not want that to get out and things like that? What was their stance? Did they say anything after, or did you think your place in the competition may have suffered as a result of Carmella revealing that?
It's a good question. I wasn't worried about my place in the competition, quite frankly, because of my SAG standing and stuff. My intention was to do other work. I thought every week from the first week I was surely going home that week. I was astonished to be there as long as I was. But I was more worried about my livelihood, because I was like, oh, I'm not going to get hired now. This is going to be a problem. And I think the most off-putting thing was, she and I were not friends or acquaintances before, whereas some of the other girls, we kind of knew each other in passing from work in LA, that kind of thing. And others where we were new friends. But the only reason it was known that I had kids was because my kids were small. I'd never been away from them, and I was calling them multiple times a day to talk to them, to comfort them and let them talk to me. And so it just felt so like, stab in the side, I don't know. I feel like people's families are supposed to be off limits, and I guess maybe I just assumed too much on that one. So, I mean, it's been a really long time, obviously, now.
Yeah,
of course.
So, obviously, despite not winning the competition, you did go on to sign with WWE. So, I just wanted to ask sort of what the process was like for that, and sort of did they sort of reveal what they had in mind for you once you signed with them?
In true WWE fashion, they reveal very little to anyone outside of the writers' room meeting. No, not only did they reveal to us through the competition like what we were going to be doing that week, so we never knew what was coming. Even when I came on board with them, some months had passed. I just was back to my regularly scheduled, work and auditioning and all of that. And then someone reached out to me in the fall, I want to say, because I think my first time back was just before the Thanksgiving episode. I think they had me doing some little segments with maybe Carlito at the time. So they just kind of said, we're thinking of, would you be open to coming and working with us and seeing, and they really didn't say very much. But if you kind of put it in perspective, when someone is acting in other people's projects, you don't get to know what the script is or what you're going to do. I mean, you get the pages, obviously, you know what the script is, but like you're just being directed by someone else. So it's not like you're going to have a whole lot of say in it anyway. So I wasn't thrown by that part, really.
No. You mentioned obviously the Thanksgiving episode and things like that. Obviously, you're involved in so many kind of fun and funny segments. Working with Kurt, and you mentioned Carlito and Luther Reigns and people like that. Obviously, did you enjoy the kind of comedic side of that? And what was probably your favorite segment that you were involved in?
Ooh, favorite's hard because I don't know that I even like. Sometimes I'll still remember them if I first of all, I have to tell you, I can't believe people even still know who I am or remember any of that time that I was there, because obviously I didn't actually wrestle or do anything like that. So I'm always grateful. Once in a while, people will post a photo that I just haven't seen in a long time, or like from a segment, and it'll kind of remind me. I did like that comedic side. I was able to have just little bits of input here and there about, tweaking things, or we should do it like this, or maybe the one that I think everyone remembers, who remembers me at all, is that one with the towel in the shower, which was like an extended segment throughout the show. That towel started out really, really long. I mean, I'm kind of a small girl, I'm only 5'3", so that towel came down to my knees originally, and then we were like, okay, we need to cut this towel. And then they were trying to be very respectful. I had a bathing suit under there. And then I was like, well, you're going to see on my back that I have a bathing suit. So perhaps I could just, there's those things you stick on the front when you're doing an open back scene or whatever. So then I suggested that, and they were, of course, on board for that. So things were covered, but we tried to kind of make it the most that it could be. It was a lot of fun. And I have to tell you, everyone that I worked with was so fun to work with, was really good at supporting the work that we were doing and the scenes, and they understood the overall picture of what we were setting up with those storylines. And I think it was a great addition to the storylines to then build up to the main event. So I think in that way there were a lot of really good, and they just had me doing crazy stuff all the time, which for the most part I didn't find out till that day when I got there.
Wow. Considering the amount of different things they had you do, it's crazy that obviously you're just, okay, here's what you're doing. You have to kind of roll with the punches.
Yeah, they would just kind of say, bring, a bikini every week, bring like a club wear outfit and like an athletic outfit. And then you just see what's going to happen from there.
Wow.
So there's one I wanted to ask about, a storyline, which you were the Big Show's girlfriend. So I just wanted to ask what it was like working with Paul White, especially. I mean, obviously he's a giant of a man, especially compared to yourself, as you say, you being 5'3". So how did you find the sort of the romantic storyline with Paul?
It was a little awkward, if I'm honest, just because we became kind of buddies backstage, and I met his wife at the time. She was a really lovely but tough girl. And then weeks later, we find out we have to do this kissing scene. And I was also married, and it is part of acting. But at the same time, it's like you have all these people around. And I was like, I hope your wife is going to be okay with this. And so there was a lot, I think, going into it. So I know for me on screen, it appeared maybe not so romantic as perhaps people might have wished. He's an amazing actor, though, which is surprising. It was surprising to me, but even just in his behind the scenes antics, there's times where, because we were friends, he would kind of like come and find me in the day and say, I need to tell you something happened. And I was like, what do you mean? And he kind of called me off to the side, and he started like tearing, and like little tears were falling. And I was like, what is going on? And he had me hook, line, and sinker. And he was like, I'm just kidding. Like, I mean, he's just like horrible. Such a good actor. He's really a great a great actor, and I feel like they underutilize him in that way just because of his size and stature. I mean, I think he's stereotypically used more for that, but he's an amazing actor.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's like you say, with the size and stature, I think we've seen that when he has broke into the acting world briefly. Like it was always to be a giant, really, wasn't it? Like with Jingle All the Way being an example that I always remember from being a kid. So yeah, I take your point. It's probably limits them in that sense, but no, it's nice to know because he always seemed like a really nice guy.
Yeah. Obviously, you also had a feud with Amy Webber. You mentioned, you know, did you get on well with Amy at the time, and do you still stay in touch, and do you stay in touch with anybody else from the company today?
Amy and I became friends kind of along the way. We didn't know each other. I mean, I think we met at the first audition. We both lived in LA, and not a lot of people in the company lived in Los Angeles. And so often we would end up on the same flights together or meeting up in certain legs of the trip. So she and I became friends. And it's, as you could imagine, it's such a culture shock because it really, there are, like we were talking about, this whole set of secret rules and almost a whole secondary language that's used that it is something to immerse yourself in and to learn. But as two outsiders coming into this, it was kind of nice to have her to stick to because we're just used to something different on traditional sets, So she and I did become friends years after I actually went to her wedding, which was beautiful. And we still stay in touch today, not as much so because we don't really work together these days, but yeah, we've stayed in touch over the years.
No,
and who else am I in touch with? I don't think anybody. I know that was the other part of your question. I'm like racking my brain. I think one of the writers and I kind of stay in touch lightly. You know how it is. Sometimes you'll just recross paths with someone and you're happy to see them and you catch up, and then it might be quite a while before you see them again. I also don't really do any of the, we have those signing conventions and things here stateside, and I don't really go to many of those. So I just don't happen to see a ton of them because I don't live in the same area. I'm still in California, and most of them are usually on the eastern side.
Yeah, of course. You made me laugh, and you were saying it was nice to have someone who kind of to go through that with, because it's not like kind of other things. I was just thinking like, so there isn't wrestling court in Hollywood. It's like such a completely
not in Hollywood. There is wrestling. There are wrestling schools somewhere in the southern part of the U.S., but that's not the way we came in. And there is no like cheat sheet they give you or any kind of like booklet of like. And that actually became a little bit of a sticking point early on. It became clear either you guys are going to learn and immerse yourself and become part of this culture and do the secret rules, or you're not. And luckily I just got on board and figured out no one tells you the rules either. That's the other thing. It's not like you come and you're new and they're like, okay, here's the top 7 things everyone's going to hate you if you don't do every day. You just don't know. I was inquisitive and wanted to assimilate and wanted to learn some of them. So I did. I made it a point to learn, but it's a different transition for sure if you didn't come up through the wrestling ranks, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
So can I ask, do you ever spend much time with Vince McMahon? And if you did, sort of what his views were on the sort of the diva search and that sort of approach to women's wrestling?
My exchanges with him were pretty minimal. Just here and there. I mean, either him kind of cruising through to give approval on a segment, or I had minimal interaction with him. I mean, he was always the Vince that you see, very charismatic, and yeah, he carries himself with quite a stature, and he is also very tall. So I never had any. I know there's some things that have come out over the years. I just never had any issues with him, but also I really did never have any occasion to be on my own with him for any reason. So it was just kind of light passing. And of course, you want to say hi to the boss and shake his hand and do the things, but beyond that, I really had minimal. I couldn't even tell you that we had a whole conversation at any point, to be honest. He's busy.
Yeah, very much so. So obviously we used to be huge fans of WWE video games, before we had kids of our own and actually had time to play these things. What was your thought, when you found out you were going to be in a WWE video game?
They didn't tell me, so I actually found out through other people. people. That's one of the people I stayed friends with at the time for a long time, was the company at the time who was taking the photos for the games and the action figures. And of course, they had several other action figure type toys they made, and I had little kids, and it was a great friendship. So they were the ones that told me. It was so strange and so interesting, especially since I kind of put together the outfit that they used. It just happens to be whatever outfit you were wearing the day they came to take the pictures, is kind of how it works. So I think it's just a funny thing to see. My kids, who were not allowed to play a lot of video games at the time, did have that game. And the funny thing is, one of them used to make me get beat up by everyone, and the other one used to make me win everything there was. So I probably even had the men's championship on that game at my house. I think it's amazing to see. Someone just sent it to me through, I think, Instagram, that in the new game, I guess people have created me. Apparently, you can create your own characters. And so I was very shocked and grateful to find out that someone's created me in the new game even.
Awesome.
So can I ask, because you sort of mentioned that, and about people sort of remembering and reaching out to you from time to time. So how do you find the fan base? Because like wrestling fans seem to sort of, like us being two of them, seem to be that way, that like you say, even though for yourself you consider it a brief sort of tenure, that the wrestling fans are sort of always still there. Do you still get a lot of interaction?
I mean, I think it's all relative. Considering the short time that I was there and the length of time that I've been gone, it feels like still a lot. People that it's even more than two people, it feels like a lot. I think what's interesting about the wrestling world and the fandom that it has, back then we weren't very far into the world of internet. So there were maybe the chat threads and people kind of bantering back and forth about that, but there were not as many platforms and things as there are today. And I discovered very quickly back in the day, people either really love you or really hate you, and will use lots of language to explain why on either side of that spectrum. So it's just kind of been my experience that the fans that love me and find something about me, stick with it and wish no harm on me, and then others really couldn't care, about me. And so it's mostly fine. I do feel like at this point, for the most part, like 90%, if someone's making a point to like seek me out and find me, probably they like me and are going to be nice to me. So there's still a lot of either fan pages or fake pages of me that came out very early on when I wasn't claiming my name places. So beware.
Yeah, well, I think we actually noticed one tried to add us, didn't we, at one point?
Yeah, we
still
saw
get some fake pages here and there.
Yeah,
it happens pretty frequently, sadly, but
yeah, it's one of the sad parts of the internet. So obviously, unfortunately, you ended up getting released in 2005, but we did get to see you return at WrestleMania 25 as well. So just kind of, how did you feel when you found out you were getting released, and then also kind of how did the decision come about to bring you back in for WrestleMania 25?
I was pretty devastated when I found out I was released. From what I understand, I was kind of the last of that bunch of 50 of us that were all released. I think I might have been the very last phone call. In fact, my bags were packed by my door to go to the airport in the morning because I was supposed to go out for TV the next day. And the thing that most people don't know is that I had just agreed to fully commit to them and go on the road full time, which was not part of my initial deal. I just was there for TV and pay-per-view and stuff. So it just felt like the worst. It sounds ridiculous to say, but like almost like a betrayal, because I felt like I was giving up my career I wanted and like giving myself over to this thing because maybe this is just how it's going to work for me. And then no sooner do I, and it was a big deal for me to come to that because it meant being away from my kids a lot and all these extra elements. And so then to be released after that was kind of like just when I agreed to like do it all the way. And now you guys are going to release me. So I was pretty devastated. I also didn't know they could do that, to be honest, which I know sounds ridiculous, but you think if you have a 3-year contract, it means you have a 3-year contract. I didn't realize that they could just at any time be like, and we changed our mind. So I was pretty upset. I understood though that they maybe didn't have a lot of storyline that they could figure out for me at that point, I guess, even though I, believe it or not, I had pitched several because some part of me thought that would be a good idea and it was not. So yeah, I was pretty upset for quite a while. I got back to, my other work and made the best of it. And then several years had passed. I didn't really go to any shows even when they were in town. I think I maybe went to one early on just to say hi to everyone, because then you also don't get to see anyone, right? Because they don't let you know your last day is your last day. So then also all these people that you've just seen every week for a year, you just never going to see them again. And it's not just the talent, it's the crew and all the other staff. And so I think I did go back and say goodbye about a year later. But then WrestleMania 25, I had a friend, and he is more in like the baseball card selling world and those type of things. And he was like, why don't you just go to the show? I was in California still at the time. They were having just a regular show in Texas. I think it was a televised show. And he was like, let's just drive across and you haven't seen anyone for a long time. Just say hi. They do have Mania coming up. They've been talking about bringing back a lot of people, and kind of hemmed and hawed about it for a while. And finally he convinced me and we made this crazy drive, and I just went and said hi. And I do think sometimes that's what it is just in LA, they call it a go see, where it's just you going, saying hi. They see that you look pretty much like you look and haven't changed your appearance in some drastic way that they would be unhappy about. And then lo and behold, a few weeks later, they called me and asked if I would like to be a part of it. And I did.
Awesome. So I just think it's the last of the wrestling ones, but I just want to ask if you watch the current product.
I would like to say yes, just because I don't want anyone to be upset that I don't, but I don't.
No, that's
more
fine.
of a streaming services kind of gal these days. I canceled my cable many moons ago. So
yeah, I think that's kind of the way of the world now, isn't it?
I think so.
But yeah, no, obviously that's crazy. So thanks for giving us all those insights. So obviously, we've kind of been following you on Instagram for a while, and obviously, you're now a renowned psychic medium. So when did you kind of discover that you had this gift?
What the heck happened in there? I know it seems like a very strange transition. What a lot of people don't realize is that before doing acting and modeling, when my kids were I think my daughter was just a baby, it was her first year of life, I was starting into a career of wellness. I learned massage therapy. I was learning natural medicine and natural healing. And so that was my focus. And then I just kind of decided I wanted to, what really happened is I was also training and then doing massage and training. And I was interested in doing fitness competitions, and then modeling started from there. So after the WWE implosion, one of the things I did, as well as doing appearances and some other acting work, was return to the wellness side of things. And then I really got deeper into studying energy and something called Reiki, which is a Japanese system of energy healing, and really understanding the chakra system and how our emotions can sometimes cause physical tension or problems in our body. And the more steeped I became in that work, I had already started my own wellness practice and was seeing clients pretty regularly by that time. I was learning about intuition and things like that beyond what we can see, because the truth is we're all empathic. I mean, I'm sure that you guys are friends. I'm sure if one of you shows up to set one day and something's off, you kind of know, like, hey, what's wrong? Even if the other one says, no, I'm fine, something's wrong. That's just, that's your intuition. And I was doing healing sessions and working with people, and then all of a sudden started to become aware of, the best way to say it is, it's spirit people, but like invisible dead people standing next to me. And I could understand who they were, and I could give a few specific details about them, maybe something they would say or some characteristics about them. And it just sort of started happening. And I was like, I didn't even allow those type of TV shows in my house at the time, which I know sounds ridiculous. But I was like, hold on, like, what is happening? Do I want this to happen? Like, am I supposed to be doing this? And how do I even use this? So then I sought mentorship and training. And actually, a lot of my favorite mediums are British. So I already love you guys. And then just really kept training to find out, did I want to do it, or what could it mean, and how could I help people with it. And then I did find out along the way that my grandma, when she lived in Italy, when she was growing up, they lived in a mining community, and apparently she would see the deceased miners walking down with the girls and the mules. You know how they used to do that with the old mines. So she was mediumistic, and just nobody talked about it and nobody told me, and she never mentioned it. But I guess, it was one of those things where my dad was like, oh yeah, your grandma always did see people and see things. And I was like, oh, no one thought to tell me this at all.
Wow.
And so yeah, and I, how sometimes once you understand something as an adult, you look back and things when you were a kid just kind of make more sense, so there were also those experiences that I'm like, oh, okay,
Wow.
I did really see those 3 people standing there, or little things like that. So yeah.
Wow.
It's fascinating, to be fair, because I'll be honest, I was kind of half expecting you to say, like, you've sort of always had that sort of that connection or whichever, but it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were, I suppose, skeptical may not be the right word, but like you were sort of a bit unsure about. So I mean, how like as you say, was that something that you realized, like you say, there was a lot of things that those experiences, had you sort of understood how it all works the way you do now, it made a lot more sense to you back then?
I think it would have. Like, for example, when I was a kid, I was in Catholic school for a while, and part of Catholic school as a kid is they make you go to the mass every week. And whenever the priest would be up there at the pulpit, I could see colors around him. I could see his aura. I could see colors moving. I just never, in 2nd and 3rd grade, thought anything of it. I just didn't really, and it's not something you go, even if you went home and told about it, they'd be like, what are you talking about? So it was things like that I was like, oh, okay, something was happening, those kind of things.
So apologies for probing, but
probe, please. That's why we're here.
No, I'm slightly intrigued. So you mentioned colours, so just, I suppose, a bit of an education for myself, and I suppose for Carl and anyone watching. So can I ask what some of those colours mean? When you see a particular colour around the person?
So one of the main mentors that I've trained under, his name's Andy Bing. He's actually from the UK. He's an incredible medium, and he's really been the one to help me understand that each of the colors has a group of specific meanings with them, rather than just, some people will teach it like, what do you feel like that color means? That's not it. They all have very prescribed meanings, but there's a group of meanings, and then you're kind of intuiting what meanings. So where sometimes people will ask me, oh, what color is my aura? Well, truthfully, we have all of the colors all of the time, just moving in different ways based on whether it's a core quality of you. Like perhaps if someone has the ability to be a business owner and is a leader and has a strong personality, typically that's in a vibrant red that I would see that. If someone tends towards angry outbursts or aggression, or perhaps even tips into alcoholism, that's going to be in a red that looks more stagnant or muddy. So it's really the color and the quality of the color that helps understand the person. It's kind of interesting.
Oh, it's fascinating.
So I will book you with follow-up questions, but I think find
yeah, no, it's okay. I like it.
So am I right in saying that, does everyone have a color, or have you ever encountered people who don't? Does that make sense? And what would that mean?
It does make sense. Yeah, everyone has all the colors all the time, because really what's happening is we're a soul inside a body, right? We're not a body who has a soul. We're a soul who just has this body. The emanation of our soul is what causes our auric field. So your soul's emanating all the time. Typically, I can see them outside of myself, like I see you. If someone is on kind of like a lighter colored wall like I am, if I let my eyes go a little bit soft, I'll just start to see light colors moving around them, maybe blues or yellows. But we all have all the colors moving all the time in different layers, if that makes sense. So if you have something that just happened this morning on your way in, for example, that's probably going to be right on top. Whereas if you have a trauma that happened to you when you were a kid, or a core quality of you, like say you're always going to be a person of integrity, that's in the deeper colors.
Right.
It's probably a lot of information, so sorry.
No, it's fascinating.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. So is this the type of thing that you sort of have to do in person? Because I imagine it's sort of well, obviously you have to interpret the colours, so it must be, let's say you were looking at us now, you may be able to see something, but it wouldn't be as maybe as vibrant as it would be in person. Is this something you would have to do face to face if you were trying to sort of read someone's aura?
No, I can do it via Zoom. I actually don't have to even be looking at the person. I can sense the colors without
Ah,
seeing
right.
them.
Okay.
A lot of us is
Yeah, I
not
suppose I'm
through
taking
our
it very
physical
literally through
eyes. Yeah.
vision, but yeah, I take your point. Yeah.
Yeah, but sometimes I can see it through my physical eyes. Really, because you guys are on a background that has lots of colors and lots of parts, I can't physically see it. But if you were on more
Yeah,
of a
it's a
solid,
very,
lighter color
very
background, I
busy
could.
background. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit busy and it's dark, so I can't see it as much. But I mean, we really do have all of the colors. Sometimes I'll use it in psychic readings, and then sometimes even in mediumship. If someone from the other side's communicating, they all communicate a little differently, but they might show me certain colors to help me understand. I just had someone do this week where she was a lovely lady, and I was getting qualities about her, and I didn't quite understand her relationship to my sitter, my client. And then all of a sudden I saw this really beautiful pale pink, which is typically the color that represents the mother's love. And so I knew that was his mom, and it was. So sometimes they'll show it like that.
Wow. So like you kind of mentioned different types of kind of healing and methods and things like that. What I think you mentioned Reiki or Reiki before. What are the different kind of methods that you typically use?
So for me, I feel like there's essentially two buckets of what I do. There's healing and then there's reading. So healing, I am very steeped and trained in Reiki. I actually train Reiki practitioners now too. So that's always a part of what I'm doing when I'm healing. I also use other kind of energetic tools to do chakra clearing and balancing and that kind of thing. And then I'm also trained in something that's called trance healing, trance medium healing, which might be a little farther out there on the woo-woo spectrum for your listeners. I feel like we're about to lose everybody right now. Which is essentially me going into a deeper meditative state, and then my healing guides working through my energy in the physical world. So I'm less aware during that segment. It's kind of incredible. I've tested it over the years because I used to do that in my massage practice too. And it's 90% of the time, once I start moving them to that higher vibration, more of like a quote unquote trance energy, 90% of people fall asleep during that time. It's really interesting. And then you kind of bring them back. And then the other bucket, so to speak, is reading, which for me, my intention always with a session is to attend to the greatest need of the soul in that moment. So sometimes that is hearing from a loved one who's crossed over to the spirit world, but sometimes it's hearing about elements within our own lives, right? If that's the biggest thing, perhaps someone just lost a job or they've got a new baby coming in, that's probably the biggest need of their soul. So I don't necessarily delineate them. This is a psychic reading, this is a mediumship reading. It's just most of them end up being a combination of both, but it's really whatever that person's soul needs in that moment. Does that make sense the way I'm explaining it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fascinating.
Feel like I'm using my own lingo that you guys can know.
No, honestly, it's fascinating. Do you use like crystals and things? And I know that there's people that kind of put a lot of.
I have so many of them.
Yeah.
I think use is a strong word. I love them. I think they're pretty and beautiful. And for me, I encourage people to use them more like you would any reminder. Like you could also have a plaque on your wall that has a quote that's an affirmation you're reminding yourself. So if you use it that way, I just
It's
love
more
them,
about sort of what
so.
you put into it yourself.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
More about the intention, and I don't think they have like magic powers or anything like that. And I feel like if someone likes them and enjoys them, then yeah, I'll have them around. But if I don't think it's gonna do, no snake oil, right? I don't think it's gonna do something magical. But I think it is a different way of focusing our energy and concentrating our intentions, certainly.
Yeah. So obviously, while we're on the sort of topic, you've recently launched your new podcast, which is the Spirit Speakeasy. So I just wanted to sort of ask a little bit about that, about sort of firstly how it came about and sort of what the show's about.
Thank you. I'm really excited about it. This is probably going to sound so crazy, so thanks for being patient with me. I get a lot of inspiration from, I don't know where it comes from. I don't know if it comes from my spirit guides. I don't know if it comes from my own soul or my ancestors. I don't know, but I kept getting the nudge to put myself out there in a different way again. And I've been hesitant, and I have a coach myself because I believe we should all practice what we preach, and been getting the nudge to do it for a year before I even was willing to touch it, just because you guys can attest, I know everything that goes into it and it's a lot. And I'm kind of a one-woman show over here. So I really had meditated on it quite a bit. I do this thing where I'll kind of meditate on an idea and then I'll go for a walk because I need to like move my physical body, and then inspiration will drop in. And what the turning point was for me was I got this inspiration that it's not about, I just have this weird thing about putting myself out there in a way, like I don't want people to feel like I'm trying to be popular or I'm trying to like capitalize on this in a weird way. But I got this quote unquote message, if you will, that just look at it as a different way of building community, a safe space for people to get trustworthy information from vetted professionals. So that's really been my intention. It's half interview. So half the time I have, the way I'm saying it is mediums, mystics, and the spiritual luminaries of our time. Sharing things. And I, like you guys, I ask a lot of questions, which I think makes the conversation more interesting, right?
Oh, yeah, that's the fun of it, isn't it?
Yeah. And then the other half of the time is me doing solo episodes, chats, either giving tips or tools. The first one I did was the story of how I went from being a WWE Diva to a psychic medium, which tells kind of more of the personal side of it too. And then, little tips and tricks. And eventually I'm going to start doing some one-on-one readings in there so people can kind of see inside a reading and what that looks like for people that, have never experienced it or don't understand how it works. It's a little bit of everything, but I'm pretty excited about it. It's been a lot of fun so far.
Yeah, definitely. I love the fact that you've got obviously that mix, that blend of, you have other kind of people to come on the show and you can learn from them and how they do things, but then you do have these kind of solo episodes where it's kind of, your take on things or you explore different topics. One of the things about like your Instagram that I really like as well is just just like the quotes and things that you just put out, and it just you take a second to just stop and actually think sometimes a lot of the questions you ask. So yeah, definitely. Definitely enjoying it.
I appreciate that a lot because it is me sitting in my bed late at night, coming up with all those question posts and all the quote posts and all. Like I do all of that myself. Still, I'm still in that place, so it means a lot to me that you like them.
Yeah, awesome.
So I think we'll sort of close off by just asking, for anyone who's watching this and or listening to this and I may not know, if you could sort of tell us sort of how they can sort of follow and find yourself and specifically your podcast and any projects you've got going on.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. The easiest way to connect with me and know that you're connecting with me is just to go through my website, which is joyfulmedium.com. All the social links are there too. As we talked about, there's lots of fake profiles out there. So to make sure you're getting the right one, they're the little icons. You just click them. Most of my profiles are at Joyful Medium. But just double check. And then I do have a free 3-day signs mini course that everyone might be interested to try. You just go to the homepage of that website, joyfulmedium.com, and pop your email. It's 3 mini lessons. So it teaches how to get signs, like if you see recurring numbers, 1111, 555, it teaches you what all the numbers mean and how to start understanding when you see them. It also teaches you how to set up a very specific sign with the universe. Like say you had a question if something was right for you, how to set up a sign about that. And then the third lesson is how to set up very specific intentional signs with any and all of your loved ones on the spirit world. In the spirit world, because sometimes we see a sign and then we're like, is that someone? Is it not someone? So I love teaching that. So that's a fun freebie that I would love everyone to have who wants it. And that really is probably the easiest way to connect with me is joyfulmedium.com through my website. I would love it if everyone would come see me and listen to me on Spirit Speakeasy. And that's everywhere you find podcasts, which I think you guys have all the same outlets that we do over here pretty much. That's more or less how to find me, but don't be fooled. There's lots of imitators in every genre out there, right?
Absolutely. But yeah, we'll make sure as well that we share all stuff across our socials as well. We'll put all the links in the video and things. But honestly, Joy, this has been so good, so fascinating as well, and just what a great guest. Thanks for coming on,
guys. I'm glad we were able to finally connect.
Awesome. Us too.
Yeah. No, thank you very much.